California and red clay in Georgia.
What's up, everybody? Today is Friday, October 16th, 2020. This is A Talk in the Attic, and I'm your host, Kirk Ross. Today marks a big day here in the Attic, given that we're coming off our biggest interview guest to date, and to that end, it's important that I keep the positive momentum going by putting out another great episode today. But it's not just that, folks. It's really not. Because not only is it imperative that this particular episode is also solid, but it's important that I retain at least some of the 1,000 plus new listeners that we've picked up in the past week. But I must do that without pandering to these new listeners. So to all of you tuning in as a result of learning about A Talk in the Attic through my conversation with Roland Welker, then first let me say thank you for giving the show another shot today. And second, let's address the elephant, or the muskox, in the room by saying that guests of the Attic are not always elite survivalists or alone champions like Dave McIntyre and Roland Welker. In fact, we try to offer a wide variety of perspectives by keeping our guest list completely random. And as you can imagine, while I appreciate that you're listening, I do have an obligation to my early fans to stay the course that initially drew them into the show. So please, understand that you won't get a Roland Welker guest every week. But that said, today is your lucky day, yet again, because my guest today is Tracy Domitrz, known best for her long-range archery skills and mastery of big game bow hunting. Hold on, I'm being told that through hand signals that Tracy is neither a world-class archer nor a bow hunter? Hold on. Okay, well, she's at least on History Channel's Alone, right? No? Okay. Fine, I think I made it pretty clear that we were going to scrap the initial vision for the show so we could cash in on this alone angle, didn't I? Sorry you had to hear that, folks. I'm just having a little trouble with my research interns here. And this is a one-man show, by the way. Turns out that Tracy Domitrz is not lethal with the recurve bow, but that's okay. Because what Tracy Domitrz is an expert at is teenage mental health, an issue that is growing increasingly pervasive every day. For Tracy, though, it's more than just an intangible concern. It's her career. Tracy is a mental health counselor at an all-boys prep school in Boston, Massachusetts, where her caseload is made up exclusively and entirely of 12 to 18-year-old boys. Some of you shudder at the very thought of surrounding yourself with a bunch of stinky teenage boys, and that's the rap that this demographic often gets. But for Tracy Domitrz, a passionate supporter of female empowerment, her students, or her boys as she calls them, are more than just immature hormone machines. They're future leaders. Because while she fights for a future that includes as many females in power as males, Tracy does know that change happens slowly. And so to that end, building her boys into better men is the most effective means of change. And I don't think anybody could disagree with that. Some of you are thinking, wait a minute, this show is supposed to be fun. Why are you talking about teenage boy mental health? Well, first off, because it's important. And it's likely affecting at least one person in each of our lives. But secondly, our conversation is still fun. Because Tracy is a biological sister of my non-biological brother, Zach, making Tracy, in and of herself, a sort of sister from another mister to me. In fact, I considered introducing Tracy as my sister, but I didn't want to deceive all of you, not when I was already lying to you about Tracy's archery acumen. But in all honesty, Tracy is a smart, engaging, funny young woman, one who spends her off hours coordinating mental health crisis interventions, and when she's not doing that, she's probably leading a team of politically active peers in a phone banking session. Oh, and did I mention that she regularly travels to Guatemala in support of her involvement in the NPH International Volunteer Program? Yes, NPH International. No, not Neil Patrick Harris International. Nuestros Pequeños Hermanos International. An organization dedicated to helping at-risk children in Latin America. Before I drive any more of you away with my verbosity, let's just get into the interview. As is the case these days, this episode will also be released on YouTube and includes our entire video chat. Please check out the show's YouTube channel at your leisure, or is it leisure? Either way, Thank you so much for listening or watching or supporting whatever it is that you're doing to engage with the show. In the case of 2 dissatisfied YouTube users, engaging with the show meant thumbs downing my Roland Welker episode, but hey, I can't please everyone, right? And now, without further ado, here's my lovely chat with the lovely Tracy Domitrz. Let's start the show. All right, here I am, the first Domitrz to make their way into the attic studio. What's up, Tracy?
Hi, Kirk. How you doing?
I'm well. So let's talk a little bit about what's our connection. I want to hear it in your words. What's our connection?
I have this like distinct memory of my brother's wedding in the Bahamas, sitting there at the table. I'd met you before that, but like you and I like turning to each other and having this like heart to heart at the table. And, like, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but it was like, I remember distinctly that you said like, I wish so much I could have met your dad. And you like, I could feel how much you like meant that. And that is like, to me, that is like Kirk and knowing him. But you definitely
do wish that.
I wish that.
Yeah.
To me, you're my brother's best friend that he met when he started working in Grand Rapids. And I think I heard about you because I live so far from him. You've been like kind of mythological for a long time.
I'm real.
You are real. You're real. I mean, you were there in the Bahamas or I had too much rum, but either is possible.
No, I've never been there, actually. Sounds wonderful.
Shit.
Yeah, I mean, your brother is such a unique guy, and I see so much of you in him. And so I have to attribute that to your parents. You guys look similar, right? So where does that come from?
Well, I would say it's Poland. We are all, even though we're 50% Polish, 50% German. I think I look like I should be polka dancing all of the time. And Zach and I for sure have like the same nose, the same like squinty Polish eyes. We definitely have that in common. Look a lot alike.
Such a harsh approach to your looks. No,
it's what it is. You know, I have a picture on my desk at work of my brother and me from his wedding. And maybe it's because it's New England, but so many of my guys think that he looks like Rob Gronkowski.
He kind of does. He's got the same, I'm not going to inflate his ego. He doesn't really have the same build, but he's got the same frame.
Don't say same build. Please.
I have seen Zach drink 35 Red Bull and vodkas once too, which it would be similar to Rob Gronkowski too. If you're listening, Domitrz family or other side of the family, he's not really like that. He's just he's a around dude. But enough about Zach. Well, this is really a chess move on my part. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to hear about your story.
Yeah.
But it's a chess move as well to push your brother to come on the show.
I know.
So now you can always hold this over him.
Oh, please. I am throwing down the gauntlet. I was like, I'm doing the podcast with Kirk. Just like, and he was like, it's such a good get for Kirk. I was like, oh, thanks, Zach.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've had my people have been working and getting with your people for actually, right. Okay, before we move into it, you have been a difficult get. Okay. So
okay. I am notoriously unresponsive. Especially on any type of like social media, text message, really anything. Ask my family. I probably talked to my mom on the phone like a month ago. I blame it on the fact that I talk for a living, that like my job is to just listen to people and talk to them all day. Is that I feel this like it's like Catholic guilt mixed with like hyper introvertism. And so it's like, pull the blanket over. And then 2 days later, it's like, oh shit, you didn't get back to them. You're a horrible person. And you need to send like 1,000 exclamation points.
Well, I mean, that's interesting to hear. I'm a little bit like that as well. So Jessica and I will watch a lot of 48 Hours or Dateline or whatever. And it's really the people that have the best chance of being found are the ones that are highly responsive.
I know.
You and I, if I don't answer a text message for 3 days, no one's sending the cops. They're just thinking, well, he always does this.
That's very true. People expect it of me. I would say I started to realize it was a bad thing when like it is a common thing talked about me. They're like, oh, Tracy doesn't respond to things. And just like people you don't expect, like the 50-year-old math teacher at my school. And I'm like, oh, Noreen, I thought I was responsive.
Tracy, I don't know if I have to do this to you, but to be fair, it's the opening few minutes of your own podcast, and you're kind of classifying yourself as the person who doesn't get back to things. So, yeah, maybe your 50-year-old teacher is hard on you, but you're a little hard on yourself about it as well. You're kind of identifying as that. So, just a point.
Well, I'm glad that I finally got back to you. I am excited and a little terrified. So I think that makes for a wonderful guest. That's
perfect. It needs to be a little bit, you need to be on the edge of terror.
Yeah. You never know what question's coming, you know?
Okay. Well, we already talked a little bit about how we first met or our connection at your brother's wedding, but we kind of got into the fact that you lost your dad early.
Yeah.
Let's start there, if you will, not necessarily right there, but like, what is your childhood, what did your childhood look like? And then explain how that whole negative experience, at least at the end, kind of helped shape you to, into what you are now.
Yeah,
I know it's a loaded one and we're jumping right into it, but let's do it.
No, let's get deep. That's my favorite stuff. I'll get to the meat. So childhood, it's funny to say a quick asterisk, knowing that my brother will listen to this. So like he's, what will he pick apart? So I'm the youngest of three. So I've got my sister's 5 years older than me, and then Zach is 4 years older than me. So I would say, and we'll see what he says, I was always the black sheep. I was not athletic. And they both played sports. I really love to read and do weird things. And yeah. And so, Zach was, I say this to my students all the time, but my sister was prom queen and valedictorian, and my brother was the homecoming king and like the wide receiver or something on the state championship football team. And I was Tracy. Like I was Zach and Laura's sister. But that being said, I loved, I love my family. I loved my childhood. Like my parents were just awesome and letting us do whatever they want. And I would say my dad in particular really influenced for me the approach that I take with all my students, which is that I have this forever story for me. So high school is very different for me versus my brother because I was a freshman, my brother graduated. So it was just me alone at home with my parents.
Yeah, you're like, you have all the attention now.
I had it all, yeah. And it was fun. It was fun. I got stories about Zach from then too, but that's for the After Hours podcast. But my dad was just this like easygoing guy. And I decided I would do the track team. Freshman year of high school, I was like, this will be awesome. I don't know why I thought that. Never ran, very uncoordinated. And I went to 1 week of practice and went to the first track meet, and I hated it. I can't even say how much I hated it. And I called my dad on the way home with my friend Alexis, standing on the corner of Dixie Highway in Waterford, Michigan. And I said, like, I do not want to do this anymore. And he's like, okay, quit. And I was like, okay. And I was like, really? I can? He's like, yeah, if you don't like it, you don't need to do something you don't like. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. And I think all of the time, like we tell kids, like, you can't quit that. You signed up for it. You signed up for it. And I think he would have pushed me if I needed to. But he's like, you don't need to do this. You sound like you hated it. And you better believe I turned that track jacket in the next day. And I was like, instead, I will go be in the musical.
Is that what you ended up getting into, is like more performative visual art type stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I think where we went to school, we all went to the same. So we all went to Our Lady of the Lakes. It's like a tiny parochial high school. So it can't really, you can't really be into things in the same way. Like there's no art department. Right. But definitely I just wasn't being an athlete, kind of marching to the beat of my own drum. And I think for me, that was really like solidified by my parents, and in particular, like by my dad. He's just like, he's just kind of like was a quirky guy. He loved like all types of music, which I really loved. We watched movies together a lot. And then in particular, my dad got sick in my senior year of high school. So I was the one home when really like the diagnosis started coming in.
Right.
And I don't know if it's helpful to say what he had.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't exactly like I mean, I'd like to hear from you, obviously, but it wasn't like a in and out kind of diagnosis, right? It was kind of an unknown, mysterious thing, right?
Yeah, no, it took a really long time for them to figure it out, to the point of, my dad, like this 6'4", let's say, that's like how tall Zach is, 6'5", healthy guy, just like he was stumbling when he was walking, just every once in a while, different things, and just didn't feel good. And the way it escalated was, I mean, in retrospect, kind of crazy. But we went to so many specialists and neurologists. My parents did, until they got a diagnosis. And weirdly, after going different cities and different places, the leading specialist on it ended up being at U of M Hospital in Ann Arbor.
Right.
And
which is, I mean, it's fortunate in that context. Right?
Yeah, except that we are like, this is my Michigan State water bottle, Kirk.
That's true. I mean, that's true. But I'm sure you didn't bleed green and white during that era of your life.
I think we just kept it quiet, but this family bleeds green and white, like
including your dad.
Oh, but my parents met at Michigan State. So
it was annoying for him too, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure. And my mom, to this day, when Zach and Jacqueline got their new house, they were picking out like pillows for their couch, and it's a blue couch, and she was like, "Well, you can't get yellow pillows. That would look like horrible together."
That's funny for people who are listening outside of Michigan. That's like the in-state Michigan State versus Michigan rivalry. So think, I don't know, Yankees versus Mets or something.
Yeah. Yankees Red Sox. That's what I'd say.
I guess Yankees Red Sox is better. Yeah, you're right.
But maybe that's because I'm in Boston. But yeah, so my dad, they ended up diagnosing him with this rare disorder called multiple system atrophy. But really, it just, we can get into if we want to, but it really snowballs. Right. So I think it moved parts of our life, like decisions. We all made kind of different decisions because of it. My sister, I mean, she was already engaged, but surely like a big thing for her was my dad getting to like walk her down the aisle, be at her wedding. So he was, so she got married when I was a senior in high school.
Right.
And sort of the choices that we made off of that, I think definitely have affected all three of us.
Certainly.
In big ways. So
what did that push you towards?
Well, it sounds counterintuitive, but it pushed me to Boston. I always wanted to kind of move out of Michigan. Sorry to Michiganders. I'm a very proud Michigander, but I never want to live there. Yeah.
Totally understandable.
It's funny because here probably people think I probably want to because I talk about it all the time. But it was for college. So because my dad had been sick, he couldn't travel. Both my parents couldn't really travel with me to go look at colleges. So I was really lucky to meet people at Lakes growing up in Michigan, that like families that took me to Boston, to New York to go look at colleges with them.
Right. So where did you end up going?
So I ended up at BU, at Boston University.
Wow. Is that an Ivy League school?
No. But it is fancy, okay?
It's got a very good reputation, yeah.
Thank you.
So you had to go check out a bunch of schools before you found that one, or was that kind of on your short list? Or?
No, I have made multiple decisions in my life just totally on a whim. So I saw the campus for one tour. Other than that, I saw like 5 that day, was back in Michigan, and just was like, I'll apply to somewhere in like California, Oregon, Boston. I mean, just like anywhere in the country that's not Michigan.
Yeah. You end up at like Cincinnati or something.
Yeah, I'm like, oh shit. I'm in Cincinnati. And I going to BU because of a family friend was dating somebody who had went there, and he got on the phone with me. He's like, I heard you might go to Boston University. You should do this. Now he's married into the family and has housed me here many times. But yeah, ended up at BU. Awesome school, $100,000 in debt. So, pros and cons.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, is that right in the city? What's the college experience there?
Yes. Right in the city. Huge comparatively to most of Boston. It's like 40,000 students. And no like main campus. So you think like Midwestern college or big colleges with like a bunch of campuses, you're just in the middle of a street. So There's like a I don't know, a guitar store, and then like a Tedeschi's is like a CVS here, yeah, and then a classroom on top of it. Yeah.
That's awesome, though. I mean, that really is a different experience than
Oh,
certainly
yeah.
what I had, and what I would say what probably most folks have had.
Yeah.
So, what did you study there?
Okay, so I studied cultural anthropology and classical civilizations. I got 2 degrees.
That's awesome stuff that you could talk about. I mean, that's like, so am I? You do things on a whim, but it sounds like if you went into those subjects, you must like to dig deep as well.
Yeah, I would say the thing I am the best at, Kirk, is talking to people and then learning things. So I just talk to people, I learn more, I go tell people what I just learned, and I just like wash, rinse, repeat.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what is I mean, I know nothing about what is it? Ancient civilizations? What is it?
Okay, so one was in classical civilizations, which is basically think like ancient Rome, ancient Greece.
Yeah.
And the sort of path that I went down in that. So I learned Latin when I was there, and studied pretty exclusively this famous epic poem called the Aeneid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I can say it in Latin. It's always like a little party trick.
So you have to have, do you have a book? Well, do you have it memorized?
I can say the first line in Latin.
You got to do it. If it's a good parlor trick.
It's a good, well, it's like, well, Latin is a cool language because it's like rhythmic. So it's this is embarrassing, but it goes, Arma virumque cano Troiae qui prima saboris. That's the first line of the Aeneid.
What does that translate to?
And he who first from the shores of Troy came. So he's like, it's a story of the founding of Rome. It's
right. Yeah.
So I studied that, and I studied a lot of things in classics, but sort of just piecemeal. But my big major, what I cared about, was cultural anthropology. So it's basically just like the study of people and why cultures do what they do. And kind of what's universal about people. So what I actually was really fascinated with at the time was like death practices. Yeah, so yeah. I studied a lot on Dias de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead, right. And like Mexican burial traditions, and then how they are like everywhere around you.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty heavy. I mean, that's like a heavy subject, kind of.
Yeah.
Was that influenced by your father's situation back home, do you think, or is that completely unrelated?
That is very good podcast psychotherapy, I would say.
I'm not trying to.
No, I love it. I think I just found it really interesting. Growing up, we grew up really pretty Catholic, and definitely like the traditions of mass and different like stages of life are really interesting. And death is called, so burial practices, same as like marriage, it's called a liminal tradition, and they're basically like they happen in all cultures. And I just had teachers that were really fascinating, that knew a lot about these things.
Right.
Yeah, and like I went to cemeteries and stuff, went to different funerals, studied it with people and how they honor it and celebrate different things in Spanish cultures. I just found it really fascinating.
Is that where you spent most of your focus? Within that focus is in the Dias de los Muertos or whatever, or the Hispanic culture, or is it Latin American culture, or?
So mainly I looked at just like the practices in general that are the same. So then eventually you're just at like random people's funerals. I've had people come to like different churches of being like Portuguese and like, Italian. And you just sort of like, you take that Midwestern charm. So you're like, I'm just doing this for a paper. Can I watch your
it's kind of personal.
Which sounds weird. But then after that, I actually ended up doing it for marriages too. So I went to like different weddings. I talked to, here in Massachusetts at the time, gay marriage was already legal. It was before it was legal across the country. We're the first state.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Also first state with universal health care. So
yeah,
that's right.
Thanks, man.
Can't thank him for much, but you can thank him for that.
Oh, he sounds like a blessing right now, doesn't he?
I know. But yeah, I just loved learning things. That's really what it was for me in college. I just loved to learn.
I have to tie it all together a little bit, or I try to. I'm sure you've put a lot of thought into this just through your experiences, but So you're watching a lot of end of life or burial ceremony type. What was the word? The L word?
It's called a liminal stage.
A liminal stage. So
the
you
L
saw,
word.
so liminal. So you had the end of life already covered. You
Yeah.
then kind of moved into the marital part of it.
Yeah.
Did you see any like commonalities, common threads that were kind of, you know, uniquely and consistently divergent from one another, the same as they are in our culture? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. Well, what's really cool is that, and this sounds cheesy, but basically like all cultures do some type of marriage ceremony and death ceremony. And that's what makes it, I just find it just like fascinating, right? Like you can change everything about a group of people, whether it's, you know, access to things, to temperate, to climate, to political party, you know, whatever is happening. And like those different processes are happening no matter what. To me, that's so interesting about the human person, like that there is a need to distinguish yourself as married or not married. And there's a need to have a ceremony that says this person was alive and now they're dead. And like, that's so cool.
It is. There are also two things, particularly on the death side. I've had experiences at funerals more recently as I've kind of been more interested in going deeper into things, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like even at funerals, nobody's talking about death.
I know.
You know, and like, and I understand why, even for my own personal defense mechanisms, I get it, but it's something that we should be able to talk about. You studied it, for God's sake. So
I know. No, I know. I would say that that's very much more like an American thing. And in sort of a Christian burial tradition is to like focus on the life that was lived. One thing I really like, again, I'm no expert, so don't, if anybody
in
listening.
In the context of the attic, you're such an expert. So
I'm no expert, but in the tradition, in a lot of Latin American traditions, there's a thing called the Ofrenda, which is sort of like a home altar where you put out pictures of your loved ones after they've died, right? And you put things out for them, and every year you come back to it. So where like we focus a lot on like you're dead, and sort of like we talk about like. Now we just talk about you in the past and like remember those good memories. Yeah. Instead, there's a much more of a nature of like going and talking to your loved one, you know, which I guess some people do, going to maybe a cemetery and seeing someone.
Yeah, but it's almost viewed as like kooky or something. When in a lot of other cultures, it's kind of just what it is.
Yeah.
I had an experience back in the earlier stages of the podcast where I dedicated an episode to an older friend who was close to passing.
Yeah.
And she ultimately passed shortly thereafter. But it was a long kind of battle, so it wasn't a super tragic thing. It was just kind of time. But when I was writing that episode, I kind of like was closing my eyes and thinking about memories with this person. And for those of you listening, this is the Mrs. P episode. And it was such a remarkable feeling. For the first time ever, I felt like just by recalling memories like in a deep enough way, it felt like there was literally no difference between actually spending time with that person and thinking about her.
Yeah.
And that kind of made me feel almost like a wizard of some sort. Like, okay, I can do this. You know, you really don't have to say goodbye necessarily.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. My right after my dad died, actually, one of my best friends from college passed away. And she, her name was Alden, and she was awesome. And she, her funeral was in Seattle. That's where she's from. She would describe herself as very crunchy granola. And at her funeral, not only did they kayaked sort of out into Puget Sound and dumped her ashes there, her family did, but the like reception, where here in Michigan growing up Catholic, like the wake is always, you know, at like a golf course reception hall. That's very awkward. Yeah. It was like open bar, and we did I can't even explain to you. It was like an open mic tribute to Alden. Anybody who wanted. So cool. It went on for hours. Like people just kept coming up, different stories, singing songs they did with her. But it's like you were saying, it was like she was there, and it was like it was really cool.
So of all the different rites of passage that you studied, ceremonies that you studied, what wouldn't, obviously you probably could take little pieces of each one, but which one that do you see culturally that just seems to really like speak to you?
Oh, that is a good question. Oh gosh, I don't know. Okay, now let me think about it. I mean, I like a big to do. Like I like a celebration, I guess is maybe more of what it is. Anything I went to that was like more celebratory, they do like here in the Boston area in Jamaica Plain, there's like a really famous cemetery. It's called Forest Hill Cemetery. There's lots of actually great spooky cemeteries in New England because we're like the oldest.
Just old. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just old.
And there's battlefields everywhere too.
Oh, we can talk battlefields. But they do like a parade there, like into the cemetery, instead of just like this slow drive kind of in, you know,
they party their way in.
Yeah, they party their way in. And I just think like that is, if and when I go, I hope people party their way into the cemetery that I'm being buried at.
Well, this, if nothing else, this is good posterity here on the podcast.
That's right. You remember that. You show them the receipts.
Have you seen that movie Midsommar?
No, but I did read the entire Wikipedia.
Okay, so that movie is like right up your alley. It's spooky and creepy, but it's a group of anthropologists that are going out to Switzerland or Sweden or whatever to watch like death ceremonies. So
okay, I'll watch it.
It seems like that's right up your alley. What about the movie Coco?
Oh yeah, I've definitely seen Coco. Please.
I think that Ofrenda or whatever. That's a word that I think I learned from Coco. So.
I bet you did.
Okay, so you were studying that.
Yeah.
But when did that turn into an interest in what would you even call yourself today? I mean, are you a social worker or a counselor? What are you?
I call myself like a school mental health counselor.
Okay.
So sort of like the old timey term is a guidance counselor, but that's really associated more with like college rec letters and changing your schedule. I don't do either of those things. So that's great. Yeah. So I would say now, to answer that question, I would call myself like a school counselor is the general term. And then I do private counseling on the side too, as well as crisis counseling. So just a lot of counseling.
It is a lot of counseling. You're taking a lot of other people's burdens on.
Yeah.
At times. So how does that not make you like take it on?
Come back to me when I'm better at that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and I'm jumping ahead to being a counselor now.
Of course. That's how we do it here.
Say,
it's like
yeah.
Okay.
I would say you'll hear me say this, and probably already have. I call them like my boys or my kids all the time. Part of what's helpful is that I was never a 16-year-old boy. So no matter what, I like don't have some like flashback trauma of like, oh, am I allowed to cuss on this? I don't know if I am.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Encouraged.
I'm not like, oh, fuck, I remember when I did that and I messed up my life. Instead, I'm like, tell me about being a teenager.
I get it. It kind of gives you like a little bit of a distance from like, the exact trauma. Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
Yeah. But there are certainly things to take home with me.
So that was a small sidebar, which the folks listening are used to this. Your brother's used to this as well. So now I'm going to snake back around and say, okay, now that I know what you're called, anything but a guidance counselor, you made that loud and clear. So when did you move from anthropologist to school counselor, mental health expert, crisis intervention expert, or whatever?
That is a great question. So I guess I moved away from it in a way, like right when I finished college, because to go into anthropology more, you have to go all in. Like you're getting your PhD, you're doing this stuff.
And for what? It's only for academia, basically academia, right?
Yes. And I walked out of college, $100,000 in debt, thinking like, I cannot go to more school right now.
Yeah, at least rent is really expensive in Boston, though.
Yeah. Making it easy on me. So I took a tiny break. I moved to Durham, North Carolina, for like 2 years, and just worked random jobs. Ended up working for Applebee's International,
like the restaurant chain.
Like the restaurant chain, yeah. Yeah, I did.
As a waitress or like at the corporate play at the corporate.
Oh, Kirk! I answered guest complaints at the corporate office for 150 Applebee's locations in Arkansas, Oklahoma, North Carolina, and South Carolina.
The Sizzler entree sampler came out and the fries were too cold. That kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah, but also like it was my 20th wedding anniversary and I ordered curly fries and there was one uncurly fry.
Oh, those are. I mean, okay. Do you have a better example? I understand. I can understand that.
I had somebody be mad that they left their own insulin at Applebee's, and like we had not told them that they left their own insulin there.
Well, okay, this is all coming together. So now you're starting to, whether by choice or otherwise, you're actually having to counsel these people that are calling in for clearly projecting other issues.
For sure, you're just listening to them. Oh no, and I would say my favorite part of working at Applebee's is that in a lot of these towns and cities, there's like the only restaurant with a bar that's open. So they they advertise all this. They call it Club Apple at night. Like after 11 o'clock, it switches and it's a club, Applebee's.
Well, there's the Embassy Suites Hotel, right?
Yeah.
We used to call that Club E. I mean, I learned that from someone in Nashville, but there'd be people in certain suburbs of Nashville that was like the place they'd go to at night because it was the most hopping. It's a bunch of like sales guys in suits and shit.
That's Club Apple. And like, I can't think of any of the names of my stores anymore right now, but I used to know the names of 150 Applebee's stores.
What kind of incidence rate are those calls coming in at? Like, are you full-time working on that?
Full-time.
You weren't playing solitaire ever?
I mean, it's a lot of complaints. And I mean, I probably played some solitaire. I didn't realize until I became a counselor at a school how much I checked my computer when I just had a random office job and was able to also read this blog thing and also check on this. And I'm like, oh, I don't get to do that anymore.
No, I don't. My wife's an attorney and it'll be the same way. I'll say, oh, did you see that text? And she's like, no, I didn't see the text. She's like worrying about some other actual problem.
I know. I'm like, ooh, I wonder how inefficient I really was. Interesting.
Well, there was no way your heart was really in the Club Apple complaint hotline. So
no.
So Durham, North Carolina has to be a pretty significant, albeit still a city and somewhat progressive for North Carolina. It's still a very different vibe than Boston.
Yes. Very different vibe. Very cheap, which was awesome. Huge ass apartment. Barely paid anything for it, which was great. I'd say it's very different. My best friend Nadia was my roommate then. She's still my roommate now. And she's Muslim and definitely like a different vibe for her, like going around there.
Definitely, yeah.
And like trying to explain to people we were at a wedding that she didn't want to eat pork. And they were like, but it's in the like beans. She's like,
right. I guess in that case.
But also I can't.
Thousands of years of tradition down the drain because it's in the beans.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Now you pointed it out.
Were you going to? Was additional school in your mind at that point?
No, not really. Just trying to figure out like what to do, make a little money. Also, at that point, to follow back up to more serious things, my dad was really pretty sick by then. So he died my first year in North Carolina. And before that, like really in college for me, as opposed to, I don't mean this to sound bitter, as opposed to my siblings, my parents really were stuck in Michigan for most of that. So like my awesome brother, Zach, came and moved me out my freshman year, from college. And my sister and my brother-in-law flew out with me with suitcases filled with stuff to move in a different year. I'm trying to think of different years. So they were there. My dad got really progressively sicker. So I know you've heard this before, but just couldn't talk, couldn't walk. Eventually, couldn't eat. So North Carolina was kind of a fun escape. It was just like you could buy 25-cent beer, which I did not know was a thing because I had gone to college in Boston.
You were the college years are supposed to be the thrifty years, and you're like right in the center of one of the most expensive cities in the country.
Yeah. I was like, I did this wrong, and just like could start over, kind of have a fresh slate from all of that. So just spent the time hanging out, having fun, and then I actually decided I thought maybe in a couple of years I'll go to grad school. Took the GREs, and my dad died the next morning. So I put going to grad school all on hold because it just felt like too much.
Too much, yeah. Understandably so.
Yeah.
And you were what, 24 at the time or something like that? Or
yeah, let me think about it. I think I was 25 when he died, or about to be. So nope, 24. You're right. Anyway, math's hard. So I don't know. I was in North Carolina for a little bit, but then I just did not want to be in the South anymore. To your point, and I know you and I have talked about this. The listeners maybe don't know, but I'm pretty politically active, very liberal, politically active, and it gets a little claustrophobic, even though you're in kind of a bubble in Durham, right. And a little tough. So I moved back to Boston, and then that's when I decided to go to grad school. So I ended up working for a nonprofit in the city, and then going to grad school full time at night to be
at BU again.
Actually went to a school called Suffolk University. It's also right downtown. They have a good law school.
It's SUFFOLK.
Yeah. Good job.
Suffolk. I've seen that. I didn't know that's how
Suffolk.
I would have called it Suffolk or something.
Oh yeah, Boston says everything wrong. That's the thing. So Suffolk is probably right.
Is it just the accent? Is that it? That's why they're saying Suffolk?
I don't know. They have. I'll think of it later. There's a town that they say. I wish I could spell it out for people and make it make sense, but it's it looks like you should say it Worcestershire, like Worcestershire sauce, but it's Worcester.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yes. You say Worcester. You don't say half the letters, and they get mad at me that my last name is Domitrz.
Get the pot calling the kettle black.
Hello.
Okay, so now you're at grad school. Now you're kind of focused. At that point, what did you choose to go into? I guess what is your graduate degree?
Yeah, so I got a master's of science in psychology. So that's sort of where there's a delineation. You could still get, in theory, in Boston, although a lot of it has changed, a degree in just being a guidance counselor. But now it's a pretty heavy focus, or completely on a psychology master's. And you have to be licensed in any state now to do it, because you're basically providing mental health support to those kids.
That just used to be done by the gym teacher who had an off time or something.
Yeah, for sure. No, before it was just you're good.
Get out there. Don't be a wimp.
Yeah, suck it up. So I just I don't know. I think to come back to the thing you asked in the very beginning, for me, what I realized was, give the pros and cons of my little tiny parochial high school, there was no mental health support there. And would it have been helpful when I was a senior and my dad was diagnosed with a degenerative disease that's going to kill him? Maybe.
Yeah, certainly.
Right. Yeah. So I just think I got to a point where I thought I am good at this. I can help people. I know how to talk to people. And I really care about young people and how to better our world. Shit is hitting the fan. And to be quite honest, even with everything I believe and want for women and truly think they are capable of, I look around at my school. I work at an all boys school, and I think I'm trying to help them because they're still going to be the leaders in a world 20 years from now. Not
because you're resigned to that, but just because that's just things don't move that quickly. And
they do not move that quickly. And even if it's not in politics, it's in business, it's in law, right? Are places where they are going to be. And if I can help develop empathy in young men, I just would feel like I can actually check off a box that I think I did something good for the world.
That's a really incredible path. I like that. I like the logic of that. It's and by the way, your political activism and some of the other things that you do in your spare time are helping the direct women's rights parts and all of the other things that you're into anyway, right?
Yeah.
So you're really doing your part, big time.
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying. I think it's it's cheesy as it sounds. I just love my job. I love working with my kids, even when they I don't know if this is good podcast content, but 2 weeks ago, I had a 7th grader in my office just freaking out. Just there are days where you think I am helping the world. And other times this kid had glasses, but his glasses had the connector thing, real cool, keeping them on.
Oh yeah.
And also we have masks on because we're in school.
Yeah, there's lots of cables back there.
Oh, there's too much happening back there for him. Yeah. But he's freaking out. He's really angry, and I'm it's okay, and we got to figure out how to fix what's happening. You're not in a good spot. What can I do to help? And just just rips him off fuck you, and like throws the glasses across the room. The glasses break. He's got like snot coming from his mouth. I'm sitting on the floor next to him. Those moments, you're like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, it crosses over into baby times.
Yeah, there are times where you're like, okay, we're good.
Yeah. So what is the age range of your boys? Your kids, your boys.
My boys. That's why I say my boys. They are. So my school is 12 years old to 18. So 7 to 12. All boys, which is not. I guess it's a thing in everywhere, but a very big thing out here in like prep school, New England. And it's a big school. So we've got about 1,600 students. So lots of teenage testosterone in the building.
Definitely, which I mean, kind of, does that not make you feel like you have a little bit of a target on your back as like one of the few females walking around?
Yes, it is. There are times where I think I'm in an assembly with them, and I'll do an assembly. Sometimes I think I'm in a sitcom. I was doing an assembly the other day on sexting and consent because they decide the guidance the school counselor should tell them, and
it could mean more coming from you, though. I don't know.
Oh, for sure, because we're like all in this. Yes, that's definitely why. But it is something to tell a group of like 300 teenage boys that are not 16 yet that they cannot consent to have sex for themselves. So like, even if you want to, legally in the state of Massachusetts, you can't consent. So I'm like, it does not matter if you say yes. You can't consent. Do you take a picture? I mean, like I'm in an assembly, Kirk. I'm the only woman. There is 300 boys in front of me, and I'm like
300 horny boys.
Yeah, and I'm like, you want to take a picture of your dick? You can't. You literally can't. You can't consent to that. That's child pornography.
Oh, yeah. You have to start dropping like the legal terminology on them for them to really understand.
Oh, I do. I'm like, we have to call the cops. I've had to call the cops. I'm like, do you want to sit next to me when I have to call your mom in and we have to scroll through your phone together? You don't. You really don't.
What a different time. I mean, maybe towards the end of your career you had it, but like I didn't have a cell phone growing up. I had one in college.
I had a cell phone, but it was like no pictures, no texting. I mean, I used it to call. I don't even know who I called. I played Snake.
Yeah, exactly. You played, yeah, whatever the version of the Angry Birds was back then. That's a tough age group. The 12 to 18-year-old boy is there's a lot of metamorphosis happening.
Yes, there is.
Tons of mixed messaging about masculinity and what their vision of that all is. It's really not a group that gets a lot of it's not a group that gets a lot of sympathy. It's kind of often looked at as like, oh, these dumb boys, these idiots, you know, put your dick away, you dummy.
Yeah.
So where do you fit into that? You know what I'm saying? How do you must like that group. You must like that age group. Is that purely because like you think that's going to be the best way to shape the future the way that you think, like you mentioned, or?
No, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I totally stumbled into my school and thought I did not think I would be at the school that I am, that I would work with all boys. But I love them. I think they are so funny and they're so interesting. And this is the line I tell people a lot, is that if a benefit I think of all boys school and working with these boys is that every single day there's a kid crying in my office. And that means that every single day a teen boy decides to open up about his emotions. Yeah. And I think that's so cool. It's like I think we have such a culture of don't talk about it. We talk a lot to the boys about wearing a mask. So like, what's the mask that you wear outside and what's actually on the inside, right? Like, what do you actually care about? Right. What are you actually scared of? Having those conversations with them in a place where they're the only ones to answer it. Like there is not a loud girl who loves to share, who's just going to like jump in over them. I will make them sit there with me until one of them talks, you know? And then, and then they get used to it. So then, oh my God, but then they get so into it. And like a really big thing is just for me, and this is like a tiny soapbox PSA. It's just like teen suicide rates are just like exponentially higher. And it just switched this last year. So I did a bunch of work this summer to study this and to work on it. But this last year, it became the second leading cause of death for kids, like teenagers in the United States. So number one has always been suicide. So number one has always been accidents, and it like by far is, but it was like childhood cancer and sickness before, and now suicide is the number 2 cause of death. Just insane. Part of it is their access to being able to find means online really fast and to find communities that egg them on or are people in the same boat in how they're feeling.
It's like an echo chamber that turns into like almost a glorification of it or something. Or
yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know if you want to get heavy or not. You know, I had a student 2 weeks ago that I love, and I've had for 4 years, who is struggling with attempting suicide and suicidal ideation. And one of the things that he created, which we've had other guys do, is TikTok is like a big thing. So it's a TikTok account, and then he makes one that's called it's called a pain account. So it's your same self, but you say all the things that you hate about yourself and that you're feeling bad about. And then other people comment like, yeah, that's something to feel bad about.
It's negative then? I mean, it's not like about confronting it, or
it's a lot of people saying like, I know what you mean. It feels like there's no reason to live. But it's just like, you imagine you're 14, your prefrontal cortex is not developed. So you quite honestly do not have the brain chemistry to see past short-term decisions. And then it's like 3 a.m. So now you're like, limbic system is relaxed. So now you don't even have any like fight or flight serotonin coming in. And then you're like, I want to kill myself. And somebody says to you like, yeah, you probably should. That is a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, right. You're very open to suggestion at that point.
Yes. You're totally open. You don't see that things are not, that they are temporary. Right. So getting to talk to them about that is just like, and to talk about their feelings. So before it gets to that, so just like, I tell my boys, I have a basketball hoop in my office and a basketball, and we play like anger ball all of the time. So like, are you pissed off at somebody? Come down, throw this ball at the wall, throw it at the hoop, dunk. I don't care. Like, tell me who you hate. Get your anger out so you don't have it lead to something bad. That's
so awesome. I mean, so let's be more specific. Let's be specific here with a message. Mm-hmm. And obviously, this is going to have to be a broad brush that you're painting with here, because everyone's got their own story and their own trauma, et cetera. But to someone that's listening, whether it's a teenager or somebody, like what is kind of the generalized nicety that somebody needs to hear to kind of bring it into perspective if they're not, equipped with the right coping mechanisms going into that? Yeah,
that's such a wonderful question. And I like that you asked that, and it makes me think, I had a student ask me that just the other day if he said the right thing to his friend. So I would say bar none, and this is just, if I could tell anybody any piece of advice, if somebody ever tells you that whether it's your kid, a friend, young, whatever, old, that they want to kill themselves, the most important thing to do is to like ask them direct questions about it. And it's also the most uncomfortable thing to do. Like the easiest thing to do is talk around it and just say like, no, we could do something to cheer you up, or even just, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. Let's do something. To ask really direct questions is like the most important thing to do. And even if you don't feel comfortable, like with the answers that you get, you can do something with them. Right. But always, no matter what, is to respond back seriously and say something back to them. So like at my school, if any kid says, I'm going to kill myself, or any version thereof, like we're going to react. Right.
Right. And so what's the first question you ask that person?
So this is great. I love your questions, Kirk, because it's like such interesting stuff to talk about. And I wish people talked about it more, because like, it's not scary. It only helps people.
Well, and I also think like I haven't watched The Social Dilemma yet, but that's I've long held the belief that like that is I'm not alone. Everyone that can see anything knows that the cell phone and the constant bombardment of notification and keeping up with the Joneses and all that is devastating everyone. Yeah. And particularly the young kids, just because it's already confusing enough without all of that shit. It was hard enough when I was in the 90s, So I think it's an important. I'm happy to give you a soapbox on it.
Well, I would say the first question that you ask somebody, if they say that they want to kill themselves, well, if you've confirmed that and they say yes, the first thing that you ask them is, do you know how? How would you do it? So that's like,
You kind of confront it like right head on right away.
Head on. Okay, like thank you for telling me. How would you do it? And then if they have an answer to that, if they say they have an idea. This is so dark. I'm sorry. Like say they say, my dad has a bunch of pills. So then this next question is always, you follow a really easy path. The next question is always, do you have access to those means? So can you easily get those?
Yeah.
So similarly, like if they said, I'm going to shoot myself, you say, do you have access to a gun? They say, no. Okay. Now we can stop with that and address what's going on.
So you're kind of getting you get to the point where you can get a no or kind of get to okay.
You're just sort of like going up a ladder, right? And then if they said yes, that they have access to means, then your next question is, do you have a time frame of when you're going to do it?
And you're doing that with some sort of discouragement as well, or you're just not, you're kind of staying completely neutral on it and just all about the facts.
Yep. Just every time you're just like, thank you so much. I know it's really hard to talk about. I appreciate you telling me. Yeah. And just let me get to the details, right? I would make up a percentage, but now I sound like I'm an expert in something. So many times people are going to stop after, no, I don't have a plan, or I think I would probably do this, right? That's very different than I have a bottle of bleach in my bathroom waiting for me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But what percent, now I know that you don't want to get into the exact percentage, but what order of magnitude of your boys? You have 1,600 boys. It's pretty pervasive, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, absolutely. So I don't have 1,600 on my caseload, but our school is 1,600. I would say depression and anxiety is extremely pervasive. And kids with pretty significant diagnosed anxiety is much more pervasive than it used to be. Yeah. Students with suicidal thoughts, I don't know how to make up a good percentage. I mean, we have students who go through with attempting to take their life every year.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that's true basically in every town, everywhere these days.
Right. Is it in your view then that the increase in anxiety diagnoses would be from classification or changes in environment, or changes in the actual situation?
Yeah, I think it's more so changes in the situation. I mean, certainly we didn't diagnose as well as we ever did before. Also, I live in a state that has the highest ratio of psychologists and therapists to per capita. So definitely a lot of access to it. But there is, can I get like dorky for a second?
You can get, what have you been?
This has not been dorky. No. Am I being a really bad podcast guest?
No, are you kidding me? I'm loving this.
I'm like great. Sweating. I'm so bored. I feel so boring.
No. This is great. This is awesome. I've learned from your brother that like the best guests are the folks that are really truly into something. And then you kind of just let them go on that particular subject, So yeah. If you're into talking about this, I think it's great. I'm into.
I love it, and questions that you have. But so there's this, and maybe you know this, and maybe all your listeners do. But there's this concept in science. I mean, it's a real thing called epigenetics, and epigenetics.
I don't know this.
Okay. So epigenetics, it's a real thing. And basically what it means is that your genes, your DNA is, right, you're born with your DNA and it's going to present the way it's going to present, right? So like maybe mine present for blue eyes and, are matched up so that I don't know, my limbs are too long and whatnot. Right, and it's also my DNA is how I'm going to present everything else. So maybe I have a predisposition for anxiety. So that gene I have, right? What epigenetics is basically that like there's your layer of your genes and then your environment is constantly bombarding your DNA, and that what they didn't know before is that your environment can quite literally change the way that your DNA presents inside of yourself. So you can they use it a lot. A really good way to think about it is in like, they use it in twin studies. So take like identical twins, they have the exact same DNA. If one of them gets cancer, the other one should get cancer. Like technically, right? That's what should happen.
Yeah, they're identical DNA, so it should. But
yeah. Exact same. But something must have, and they were raised in the exact same house, and they ate the same cereal for breakfast every day, and yada yada yada. Yeah. Something happened as an outlier in the environment. So it's used a lot in like nature versus nurture studies too, right? So the environment is affecting you. So we could use that when we talk about the rise of anxiety in adolescence in the United States. We're talking a lot about the environment that they are in, which includes, like you're saying, right, social media, these damn phones. Like, if you think about being depressed is like so anxiety and depression are like a feedback loop. So you feel bad about yourself. You're sitting there and you're like, I'm a loser. If it was 2002, you're just like, I'm a loser. Maybe you call your one friend on his house phone. His mom's on the phone. They don't have call waiting, and that's it. And then
it just ends. There's nothing to do about it.
You're Zach, and then you come down, and me and Zach watch Friends for 3 hours. Right. You figure it out. Now you sit there for a second, you think, I'm such a loser. And you pick up your phone, and what you see is that nobody liked your post, or that somebody else put something out. I mean, there's all these, every year, there's all these like freaking apps that are like secret posts. So you can like spread rumors about people, basically. So somebody has spread something about you, whatever it might be. So say you have a predisposition for anxiety, and that keeps happening over and over again. So that's the environment is literally making your anxiety like turn on.
Of course.
And all of a sudden it's everywhere. And then you also have like parents that are, often working more hours, because also like the digital world has changed that. So there's just so much going on. And again, I'm sorry to dork out, but for sure the numbers are higher, and it's a lot of things are different. It's so different than when we were kids. It's like, it's scary.
Yeah, and that's, by the way, we're not the first like 30-somethings to say that things were different when we were younger. But there's never been, and this will continue to change every year. There's never been a time in history where things change so rapidly, and that's going to continue. Yeah. Which really it has to give you pause as to what is the future of our mental health.
Oh, for sure. Even just take little things. I had a student with years ago with a diagnosis so he had something called oppositional defiant disorder. It's ODD is what it's called. Yeah. And just like, right. So he gets angry. So something that I just think about this with him, of like things that would never have happened before. I mean, he had been watching porn the night before on his iPad. My school has iPads. He's been watching porn, which he's been very explicitly told to stop doing.
And they can track all that.
Oh, yeah. But it didn't even matter, because he goes to science class, opens his iPad, working on a project with a partner, and had not closed the tab, and opens it up to just porn. Just porn.
Hardcore.
Just porn. Just whatever porn a 7th grade boy would pick to choose. So I'm sure it was classy.
It's not that different than the porn that a 48-year-old guy would choose, to be honest.
So this kid freaks out. His friends is sitting him, and he's in Paris, and he gets so upset, like spirals. But like, can you imagine, triggers him and leads to a whole yada, yada, yada of him acting out. Like, there was no way to watch porn in school in any way.
No, I mean, I'm sure there was the brave boy that once found a penthouse behind the shed or something and like stuck it and hid it in his locker.
No, it was like when you would write like boobs on your calculator. Remember?
Loose hoe. That was one of them. Loose hoe.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right though. And if you put a boob and a boob next to each other, it's boobs.
Yeah. Oh, please. A TIA. That's all a TIA 83 was good for.
Yeah, you're right though. I don't even know what you'd call the stimuli are just so abundant everywhere these days.
Well, and you can just make the long and short of it, and I tell so many parents, is you just are making shitty decisions in a world where people find out about them. And that's what sucks, right? Like, you used to be able to, not that you should, fight somebody, let's say, and move on. And now 6 kids filmed it, and we have to look into it. And yada, yada, yada. You used to be able to have a crush on a girl and want to show her your penis, and now you actually texted it to her, and now the entire hockey team has it. Like,
yeah, I do. Oh, I know. I hear you.
That's what it is. It's just the world has made it so that their stupid decisions are amplified.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk. Speaking of stupid decisions being amplified, let's talk about your position on the president. And so, how have you been spending time? I'll put it this way. Because there's a lot of people that are going to complain. I'm not one to complain. You're not one to complain. So what are you doing? I know what you're doing, but for the people at home, what are you doing to try and, impress your impression, if you will, onto the next election?
Yes.
And by the way, this is so funny because you just always are talking to people. So even this part of it is, I'm excited to hear your answer. But.
And for talked Kirk into joining this, hopefully.
I'm 100% doing it this upcoming Monday. I wanted to do it this week so that we could talk about it here, but it was not on the standard day this week, and it didn't fit my schedule. But I'm in next week.
I'm so excited. So I guess what happened is I sat in my great liberal bubble of Massachusetts, which I am just forever thankful for. And it was November of 2016. And just like, I wore my Hillary Clinton shirt to work, I was like, here we go.
I'm walking on sunshine. You're like playing that.
Oh, please. I'm like just feeling so good because I'm like, Obama is going to hand it off to Hillary, like this baton.
Yes.
Obviously.
Her.
I know it did not go that way. And so I think what I realized is so many people I know, not just here, everywhere around the country, friends of mine felt like, wait a second, I didn't do shit. I sat around and I thought, of course this will happen. And maybe I donated like $30 at some point. I bought the cute t-shirt, but I didn't do shit. And I just sort of thought, this won't happen. So we got to this summer and I just thought, well, we can't do that again. And on top of that, George Floyd's murder had happened. In Boston, there were a lot of protests. We were going out to them safely, COVID-wise, but just feeling like we got to do something. And just, to put it out there, like I'm just a white girl living in a brownstone. I have got to put myself on the line for some of these things, because if I won't, and I'm like a bleeding liberal, who will,
Yeah.
And if you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. So I ended up actually reaching out to one of the squad, Ayanna Pressley. She's a congresswoman from Boston, very often seen with like AOC and Ilhan Omar.
Is she young as well?
Yeah, she's 40, I think, or so. She's so cool. You should look her up.
I will. I'll put a link to her in the show notes.
Yeah, she's just awesome congresswoman doing great things. And she's a Black woman representative for Boston. And I have a friend who worked for her for a long time. So she said, like, just reach out to Ayanna and see what you guys can do. So I just sent out an email to everybody I knew and said, like, get off your ass and do something. You stop saying you're going to do something and you're not. Like, I will set it up if you will say yes. And weirdly it worked. So I got people that signed up and then I guilted them into it. And we started off really easy. We just did COVID calls for the first like 2 weeks. This was back, like 4.5, 5 months ago. Just how are you doing with COVID on behalf of your representative, just to get our feet in the water. And now for the last couple months, we do phone banking every single week. We really, we go for about 2 hours a night, once a week. And it fluctuates from like 8 people to 20 people on, depending on the time and who can show up when. Calling swing states, talking to voters. You get cussed at. You also get like cheered on. It is so fucking scary every time. It's as scary as doing this podcast. Like, I'm sweating.
I hope that I'm less scary than some undecided voter that might actually still like this fucking idiot.
Well, I would say we're getting down to the point where we do it. If anybody's listening and wants to join, you got 3 weeks left. We basically, the other thing I realized is just like people sign up for it. Like people I know, like, oh, I signed up through this organization. And then they don't show up because there's like, they don't know those people. They send them a reminder email. They're like, it's Wednesday night. Do I really want to call Florida for 2 hours?
Right.
Absolutely not. But because it's like everybody's sort of connected to me or now by proxy connected to somebody else, there's this like different feel to it. We stay on Zoom the whole time. We play bingo when we do it. So like, did you get somebody who said this or did that this? Just to make it fun.
What's a common one that you get on the left,
bingo
from the left and from the right?
Okay. So a common thing for the left is actually people are the best ones from the left are the old people because they pick up their phones a lot. And you can see their age on the auto dialers who are so adamant. You've never felt better than when you get like, honestly, we did it last night. And this is a true story. I had a 72-year-old woman that I was talking to, and she was so sweet. And I was like, do you have a plan for, you're going to deliver your mail-in ballot? Are you going to drop it off in a box? Are you going to do this? And she's like, honey, like I will do anything to get him out of there. She was like, it is my dear, it's the biggest thing I have to do. And I was like, yeah, like you just feel so good when you've got these like old people fired up, you know, like ready to vote.
Right.
From the left, you get hung up on a lot. Or from the right, I mean, you get hung up on a lot. And then you also...
How do you introduce yourself?
Okay, we'll do a practice. It's like, bring, bring.
I'll be a guy from the right.
So I'm just like, bring. You have to say hello first because you pick up first.
Yeah, I know. Just keep. I'm not going to say let it ring on the one first.
Sorry, bring.
Hello.
Hi. Is this Kirk?
Who's asking?
Oh, my name is Tracy. I'm a volunteer with Joe Biden in the Michigan Democratic Party. How are you doing?
Joe Biden, that idiot. I want nothing to do with that idiot. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. You see, that's what happens. You were right because a lot of people go, why? Who's calling?
That's kind of what I do because I'm like, what if they're trying to serve me a subpoena or something?
I know. I know my rights.
Yeah.
Definitely get a lot. We get people sometimes they just stay on to fuck with you. So they'll be like, you know, like, go Trump. But they'll just like, I mean, somebody last night was pretending they were from Area 51 for my friend Corey. It was like, those people do weird shit. But it's good. Every single time we have undecided voters we talk to about what we care about. We also call for a lot of not just Joe Biden. So like we do a lot of main calls to get Susan Collins out of the Senate. She's got to go. We call a lot for Gary Peters in Michigan. And if you are listening and you're in Michigan, make some calls for Gary Peters because he's the incumbent. He's a Democrat. He's awesome. And John James is like now almost beating him in the polls. So we've got to get people to call for Gary Peters or donate some money.
I'm hearing that Michigan and even like Kent County, these direct areas that I'm in are like major swings in the whole election.
Yeah. We call Michigan every week. So yeah, we have a variety of states. But different Hickenlooper in Colorado, we call for other individual ones. So we talk to undecided voters, and I would say almost every time we help somebody legitimately register to vote, and that feels fucking good.
That's got to feel good. Either way.
Yeah.
The participation is really the biggest thing that we can ask for.
For sure, and we all really try hard to be like, I just kill them with kindness. So if it's a Republican and they stay on the phone with me, because they do sometimes, I just try, okay, do you know where you're voting? Do you know this? Just try to be so nice because what I want is them to hang up and at least go like, that person, you know, didn't cuss at me, didn't make me feel bad that I said I was voting for Trump. I'm not here to change his mind. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. That girl was nice for a snowflake libtard.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
for sure. Yeah. We always pretend. It's easy for me to call Michigan because I just pretend I still live there. Where some of my friends get yelled at because they're like, "Where are you calling from?" You're like, "I'm in New York," and they're like, "Why the hell are you calling me?"
As if that's some like, you know, I'd be different if you were calling me from Michigan.
If you can't name the 5 Great Lakes, I'm out of here.
Well, okay, so you're staying busy. So what about we're gonna end it on this last part. Okay. So you obviously enjoy your job and what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You obviously enjoy somehow phone banking. No, I understand why, but that's part of it. You know, and then. Do you have any like downtime where you're not trying to convince other people that they're okay and that things are going to be okay, or what? How do you make sure that you know you're going to be okay?
Well, I go to my own therapist. I think that is key. Of course. Yeah, I'm very pro. If you do mental health, you should also do mental health on yourself. So I do that. The pandemic has certainly made things different, but I drink a lot of wine. I run a wine club with my friends based off of Gail Domitrz, my mom, who has done a wine club in suburban Michigan for like 13 years. And we use the exact scoring sheet that the moms use in Michigan.
Oh, chip off the old block.
That's right.
I had no idea about this part of Gail Domitrz.
You didn't? Then let me end with this little story, and I hope it is enjoyable for people no matter what. Is that it sounds like it's going to be dire, but at my dad's showing, like at the funeral home, you know how people send like floral arrangements and all those things. So one of the things out, you know, has little signs on it, was like this guardian angel with a bunch of flowers. And my aunt, who's very Catholic, was walking around and she said, "Oh, it says like, to Gail, we're so sorry from WOW, W-O-W." And she's like, "Oh, it must be a Bible study, women of worship." It was from the Women of Wine. Women of Wine.
Oh, that was probably the best display too.
It was the best display by far.
If you open up the terracotta pot at the bottom, there's a fifth of whiskey in there.
Exactly. I was like, oh no, they worship something else there.
I wish, like we talked about in the Bahamas, I do wish I could have met your dad, but at the same time, I'm so grateful to have met Zach, and then obviously through him, you, and in a big way, I have met your dad, just because obviously that's part of you guys, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
that was a microaggression, part of y'all, part of you two. The three of you, I should say. But
Laura's gonna be mad.
What kind of music do you like?
Oh,
Generally,
I would say everything, which is, I know, like the cheesy answer to say.
It gives me a lot of leeway, but okay, now be specific. Three songs that you like.
I feel like I'm gonna freeze and not be able to come up with anything. Here are the three people that I've seen in concert 3 times. There's 3 different people that I've seen in concert 3 times.
Seems like a great way to do it.
And it's a weird variety. Taylor Swift.
Okay.
The Avett Brothers, which is a North Carolina folk rock band. Yeah. J. Cole, the rapper.
That is quite a range.
Mm-hmm. And I basically know all of the songs of all 3 of those people.
I saw Avett Brothers at the Bridgestone Arena a few years back.
Did you? Yeah, I've seen them a couple times. I think they're really great.
So I'm definitely going to work some Avett Brothers in here. I'm kind of always on the precipice of using royalty-free music versus copyrighted music. It's kind of just it's murky. I don't exactly know how I'm supposed to handle it.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
If you may hear a karaoke version of an Avett Brothers song.
Yes, I would love that.
I am so grateful you came on. I thought it was awesome. People are going to enjoy this.
I hope so. I'm sorry. If it was bad, you can just not use it. I promise. I won't care.
It's definitely going out this Friday. You should be confident about it.
No, I don't. Yeah,
I'm not even going to send it to you. I'm not going to send it to you unless you 100% want it to. But
no, just
you were good. You didn't say anything controversial. I'll edit it so that it's the best reflection of you the accurate reflection of you, which is going to be easy to do. And now, perhaps more importantly than ever, we can make sure that your brother comes on the show.
Oh, Zach, the ball is in your court. Get on the show.
Don't make me get Gail Domitrz, famous founder of Women of Wine. Up on
you know she would. You're going to get Reagan and Isaac on first. They would do an episode.
I could actually do it now. I wasn't thinking this, obviously, because I just learned about this, but I could do an on-location interview with the Women of Wine.
Oh my God. They would love it.
It sounds terrible, actually. I don't know if they fit the demographic, but
I don't know if they would. No. You could come to my Women of Wine, but that would more fit the demographic.
Yeah. Well, so your brother has already invited me to Summerfest. Is it called Summerfest?
What? I don't know what that is.
What's the Boston area?
Oh, Porch Fest.
Porch Fest.
Kirk, you would love Porch Fest.
Tell the people before we go. This is a little bit of the Boston. We have to get a little bit of Boston culture in here. Talk about what Porch Fest is.
Okay, so this is, and I'm going to be even nitpicky here. So I live in Somerville, which is like this little funky town next to Boston. It's next to Cambridge, and Somerville has this famous thing called Porch Fest. It's one day a year in May, and it's unlike anything you've ever been to, but basically like bands are in houses across the city, and we're the most densely populated city in New England, Somerville. So there's like houses everywhere, porches everywhere, all these triple deckers, and bands play at them. People who live there, every type of music you've ever seen. And they do waves of the city at different times. So you walk through the city, and sometimes it's like you go down a side street because there's a map. You go down a side street, and it's like these 70-year-old men picking banjos. It's like Steve Martin, and there's just their wives are in lawn chairs. Everybody is drinking. You're just walking around. The cops just let you because nobody's driving around.
Right.
It is like everywhere you walk, you hear different music, different people. It's just one of the coolest experiences, and it's all free.
It sounds awesome. So there are also like pretty large name acts that find their way into these porches at times too.
Oh, yeah. Some of them are like hugely packed up, and other ones are just like these 3 random people. I mean, it's really cool.
Is it true that you saw J. Cole all 3 times at the Porch Fest?
Those are my 3 sightings. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, okay. So now that I know that it's called Porch Fest and not Summerfest, Zach called it the right way. I just misspoke. But we're going to take him up on that invite through you.
Yeah.
someday.
Okay. And we
Maybe
can do
not
like a
2021.
walking. Yeah, we'll see. You never know.
Although
Probably
outdoor activities maybe are the way to. Maybe that's just going to be the future of stuff.
That's right. Still go trick or treating.
I'm so happy you came on. Parents or kids, whoever's listening, mental health, it's a serious thing.
Yes.
This is a person who's out there doing her part. It's awesome to see. It's inspiring. Good work. Thanks for sharing your story and coming on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kirk. This was so fun.
It was fun. I'm going to hang up here, but I'm not going to hang up here.
Okay.
I'm going to stop recording though. See, I told you that was going to be fun. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for all the work you're doing. And yes, I will see you Monday at the phone banks. Have a great weekend, everybody. Peace out.